And a new report delivered to the U.S. Defense Department this week said the Pentagon currently lacks the operational framework to meet its goal of a major redeployment of American troops in the Asia-Pacific region. Joining me now with more insight on these developments is Andrew Small. He's currently the Transatlantic Fellow with the Asia Program at the German Marshall Fund of the United States. Andrew, welcome to The Heat. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me here.
Why don't we start there? Because I know you've had a chance to look at this. And let me frame it this way. When Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was describing why the pivot, she was quoted as saying, in Asia, they ask whether we are really there to stay, whether we are likely to be distracted again by events elsewhere, whether we can make and keep credible economic and strategic commitments, and whether we can back up those commitments with action. The answer is we can and we will. And yet this report says, and it came out from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, there's no durable operational framework for achieving the military buildup. And it's quoted as saying the Department of Defense has not adequately articulated the strategy behind its force posture planning or aligned the strategy with resources in a way that reflects current budget realities. Isn't that really the crux of this, that the money just isn't there, is it?
There's a money question. There's more that the US could be doing to be more reassuring. I mean, if you go through the report in detail, in practice it's relatively supportive of what the US is already doing in the region and the capabilities that gives. The gap between what they're suggesting as a sort of stepped up capacity that would provide more effective reassurance and what's already being looked at in the Pentagon's planning over the next few years, it's not an enormous gap. It's helpful for some people who would like to see a more substantial US presence in the region to be able to help put pressure on Congress, because this is a report for the Armed Services Committee in terms of getting those financial commitments. Of course, when you're talking about the pivot in a context in which budget cuts are taking place in the Defense Department, Asia's the area that's held steady. But the question really is holding steady enough? Is this in a context in which China's own military capabilities are expanding sufficient? And that's the question that the report poses.
Why the renewed focus in the Pacific?
First of all, it's a question of reassurance to allies in the region. They're looking at a time in which budget cuts are taking place in the United States, including for the first time in a long time to defense budgets, for some kind of credible demonstration that the US is there to stay during what is clearly going to be a decades to come in which Asia militarily is the major strategic region. It's also a period of time in which China's military capabilities are expanding very seriously. I mean, some of the shifts that are being looked at in these discussions around the pivot are as much around maintaining almost a status quo in terms of advantages over China. China's capacity to strike, for instance, US targets in Japan and things, US ships, has increased. So some of the focus on the region is about what sort of profile, what sort of basing, and what sort of access arrangements do you need to retain your edge.